What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Run Pure Sports MLB Swing for the Fence show. We are here breaking down the morning MLB slate. I'm here with Stats, and we got a fun, I'd say a fun slate ahead of us. 6 games only. Typical Thursday, right, where we get a lot of games early on, and then the kind of quieter night. So I've kind of enjoyed doing that. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as well, because it's a nice little break going into the weekend. But how's your day going?
Oh, man, it's going. I'm not used to the early morning show, so I'm going to try to stay awake. I'm still recovering from the Scotland trip, which I was just telling you about. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to get back on the time zone.
Yeah, how was the trip? Do you got any good stories for the people?
Probably no stories we could really tell, but yeah, I mean, it was a lot of drinking. One thing, all right, so I've never been to Scotland. My assumption was everyone's going to be drinking scotch and whiskey. I don't think I saw anyone but me drinking scotch and whiskey for the entire week that were there. Everyone drank beer. It's just a beer drinking. It's a beer drinking country, at least the part that we were in. But we had a great time. We got to we went to all 4 rounds of the Open. Got to watch the last 2 rounds inside the clubhouse. JBC's dad is actually an international member at that club, and his good friend is a 6-time club champion. So it was like being with the local celebrities there. It was pretty fun. So we got to hang out in the clubhouse for Saturday and Sunday, literally watching. The clubhouse is about, I don't know, maybe the window at the clubhouse was maybe like 60 to 90 feet away from the where the final pin was on 18. So I mean, you could literally look out the window of the glass and watch the 18th hole really well. So it was a lot of fun. We had a good time.
Yeah, this is where I wish Big T was on the show, so I could say, that's how it feels hanging out with Big T in Kentucky, right? He would absolutely hate that statement. I'd be able to watch him be very miserable on camera right now. So that's what I was hoping would be the case, but that is good jokes for another time, though. We'll have to bother Big T about that. If you guys could please hit the like would be helpful here. We're talking day baseball, as our guy Mama Rocks Homestead says, so should be a fun time. We also, I don't know if you saw Stats, me and Bryce went live yesterday on the cuff for the premium members. Okay, so you freeloaders watching right now, you did not get this show, and we went live and we talked about the Rockies and how they were the best stack, and they put up 20 runs. So that's why you got to be a member over here at Run Pure. So go sign up, and we got tons of stuff coming. And hey, Olympic basketball's coming. We got Olympics, we got it all. So it's going to be fun. And I know this is like a little bit of the home stretch for NASCAR for you, I'm sure, too, because NASCAR, this is like the last month or two, right, where NASCAR is going to have some good prize pools.
Yeah, we're winding it down. So once the NFL comes, then obviously things change a bit. So we've got maybe 5 more weeks, something like that. And but NASCAR will be fire for the next few weeks. Rubio and I have not done the show together now for a couple of weeks. So I'll be looking forward to seeing him on Sunday. We do that Sunday morning show at noon for the NASCAR. So yeah, NASCAR's hitting on all cylinders, should I say, pun intended. And yeah, we got the bets going on. I mean, the bets for the props that I do the K prop bets every day. Those have been absolutely fantastic since like May. So for those of you, even you members, regular members, get over into the betting Discord and catch some of those MLB. I'll give a few out. I've got a bunch for these early games.
All right, we'll get Matt on the show, and we'll break down the early slate. I will see you in a couple weeks in Napa, so that'll be fun to be able to hang out with you. But and then we got football coming, so we'll have preseason, college, it's all coming. So be sure to check all that out. Also, I know my internet's a little bit choppy. I think it's mine, so apologies for it. But let's break down the slate. Let's talk about it. Let's dive in. First game up, and since I'm on the road, I got to pull up my iPad. As weird as that sounds, because my internet is terrible. First game up. Is it the Padres and Nationals? What?
Where are you?
Can you hear me? Oh, I'm in Jersey.
Yeah,
I'm in Jersey. That's why.
Oh, you're home. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Jersey. Okay. Yeah, I'm in Jersey while you're in Florida, I'm sure. Even though you should be in the New York area since you're from here, but you migrated down to.
I am down to Florida.
Well, first game up is Padres and Nationals. Good game. I was actually the winning stack yesterday, right? Padres were the number one team that you kind of needed. I guess you could argue Francisco Lindor was like the play you probably needed, but overall you needed Padres, right? They put up 12 or 13 runs, and they played in the Nationals Park. We know how that Nationals Park is. It's when it's hot, the ball flies. So we got to consider this game. I'm actually mad at myself because I could have played more Padres yesterday. I think that was something I wish I would have done. I still had them, but I just felt like I overlooked them more than I should have. And I don't want to overlook them here. But the field's not going to overlook them, right? Patrick Corbin's on the mound. Patrick Corbin, we know he's really bad at throwing the baseball. It's going to be, what's the temperature? 80 degrees, wind blowing out. Dylan Cease on the mound as well, who, to be fair, I like Dylan Cease. He's going to be chalk. He's the SP1 of the slate. I'm not saying I want to play or stack against Dylan Cease, but I have seen Dylan Cease get blown up. And you could make the case to the Nationals in this park and in this situation and on a shorter slate, right? It's not a 3-game slate where it's just like look for the leverage play. But I don't know. I don't think the Nationals are crazy from a leverage perspective. I think the Padres, though, you got to like them. I'm going to have exposure to them. I'm sure you are. I'm curious what you're doing with both sides of this game because, again, it is only a 6-game slate.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're playing the Sims, right? So if you look at the Sims, you're going to get a lot of, or a decent amount of Washington. There's some other ones like, so typically if you're not familiar with Sims, and we've got Saber Sim that we use over at Run Pure, and a lot of the guys are, what you're going to get typically is not the chalkiest plays. That's why I like the Sims for baseball. They're going to put you on some other plays maybe the market is not going to be, and that's the whole point of the sim, is where if that stack does wind up going off, you're going to move up quite a bit. So I think some people will have watched. This is not my favorite of the sort of leverage plays that you can make here today, fading Cease. Although, when you look at a slate, I mean, all the slates you should be doing this, but when you look at a slate this of this size, it's really easy to do. It's gonna, the chalk is gonna be super chalky. Everything, the stacks are gonna be higher owned, the pitchers are gonna be higher owned. So you really have to go through and say, all right, which of this chalk can I just not live without, and which of these guys are just a must have. So I think the first question you're going to have is Cease the guy that you absolutely have to play? Now he's got the highest K prop on the board. We're projecting 6.8 Ks in the K market for Cease. Corbin, you mentioned. I mean, we're not going to touch Corbin as far as we don't need to go that contrarian to touch Corbin. As a matter of fact, I've got a Corbin. I've got the Corbin under 3.5 minus 150 over at BetMGM right now, as far as the K props go. So I think Cease should be the highest owned pitcher on this slate. I think I think there's a couple of guys that here in on the slate that you don't necessarily have to play Cease. The other thing about this slate is I don't think salary is all that big a deal. I mean, we've got a couple of pitchers in the 9K, that 9 to 9.5K. Cease is going to be at that 9,200. I'm not all terribly concerned with price, so I'm really looking at maybe, and I'll get to why I'm bringing that up when we get down to like Scherzer. But Cease at the 9,200, I think winds up being the highest owned pitcher on the slate. If not him, then Burns. And I think you have to see which one you want to fade more. Is it going to be Cease or is it going to be Burns? And I would prefer to fade Cease over some of maybe these other top pitchers. Not that I don't think Cease is going to be strong, but I think you have to make a stand with one of your pitchers on DraftKings here today. And I think Cease would miss the cut for me over a few of these other guys.
No, yeah, those are all really good points. And I agree with you. Like you do have to make some kind of stands on the 6-game slate, right? You're gonna have to play some chalk. It's not just like a 11-game slate. We're just like, oh, I'll just like run stuff and play all these different teams and call it a day and click optimize. You have to think a little bit about it and make a decision on it. And for me, I agree with everything you said. I think you can make a case that guys are going to come in higher owned. Cease is going to come in way higher owned than normal. And it's not that I don't like Dylan Cease. I'm not saying stack against him. I'm just saying I could take a stand and be lower on Dylan Cease than the field, or maybe just go even with the field and take stands in other spots. That's a decision that I can make when kind of building out my teams. And I'm with you. I wanted to mention the Nationals leverage thing just because I think it's worth mentioning. It's not something I'm going to do on this slate, but I think it's part of the conversation when it's a shorter slate for sure. When I do these like when I do these after hours playbooks, always I try to say, hey, like it's 4-game slate. This is the leverage play. And I'll say, I'm either doing the leverage play or I'm not doing the leverage play. And I'm not doing it here for sure. I do think you can make a case for a CJ Abrams one-off or a Lane Thomas, but I don't need a full 5-man this team. Understand if you want to, though. I wouldn't say you're absolutely crazy. I do agree. Corbin Burns, probably the guy that I want to go to if I'm not going to someone like Dylan Cease. And well, why? He's going up against Miami. We know how bad Miami is. It's in a good pitcher's park. Just everything aligns. And that's our next game to talk about. I like them. I struggle with what to do with Baltimore. Baltimore is the big question mark for me because pretty much any slate Baltimore's on, no matter the slate, the park, the pitcher, like I just think we have to talk about them and have a conversation. Should we play them? Should we not? Are they owned? If they're not owned, why are they not owned? And should we play them? I mean, they're going up against Munoz, and he struggles a ton with walks. And that's the kind of spot where you do want to target 5-mans, I think. So I like Baltimore. Question is, and I'll ask you this because I think you like to talk about this a lot. Is Baltimore going to be your single entry team? Because I think the Padres are the chalky team. And not saying you don't want to eat chalk or to say they're bad, but typically in some of these single entry contests, we look for like a tier 2 team, right? Or another team that's good, but just going to kind of not have as much ownership. And I think the Padres get extremely steamed. So my question is, what about this Baltimore offense? Like, are they going to be under-owned to a point where they're worth taking a shot on, or are there just too many factors going against them? Like, will the ownership be too high where it's like, I don't want to play them in this shitty park?
No, I think they're going to be fairly high on. I think San Diego comes in as the top stack here, and I think Baltimore comes in right below them. So, single entry in a big GPP, I really think you kind of have to fish down to like that, at least the 3rd best stack, maybe down to the 5th best stack, something like that. So I think if I'm playing single entry, I'm not necessarily going to be on Baltimore either. Again, I watch I see some other shows. I listen to fantasy sports. Like, it's really easy to just tell you what the chalkiest stacks are going to be, or the chalkiest players and pitchers, and just say, well, I like those guys, right? Well, the whole market likes those guys. The key is we're trying to win. And in order to do so, I mean, do I like San Diego here? I do like San Diego. Do I like Baltimore? I do. In 150 builds, I could play it a little bit differently. When you're playing a single entry, I've got to look down to, you've got basically 3 teams here. If you look, I post that chart that you're familiar with the team total stacks. You got 3 teams at about a 5 projected runs: San Diego, Baltimore, Texas. What does that mean? It means that according to the betting markets, at least the sharp markets, they're all on equal playing field as far as how many team totals or how many runs they're going to score for that team. So if that's the case, I blindly would just take the 3rd best team in there, which is going to be Texas. So if I'm single entry, or the 3rd most owned team, I should say. So now we don't know. I'm going by Saber here, but we're probably going to be looking at Texas being the 3rd most owned. So I would just look that way because I'm going to try and just get a little advantage on the field when everyone's projected for about the same amount of runs. I don't overthink it. Like I'm not. You're not going to hear me talking about ISO and all these other stats. Like, I look at the betting markets, and then I kind of base it. I'm playing game theory. I'm not trying. Now, if you are single entry, someone asked me this yesterday, actually, in a DM, and Boynton's great for this. So kind of follow Boynton as far as pinch hit risk and things like that. When you're playing single entry, I think now it really magnifies the fact that you don't want to really play guys with pinch hit risk. When I'm playing 150 lineups, I don't really worry all that much about that. It's going to kind of all factor in and in the wash, but I'm more worried about how my allocations look. So, sorry, just kind of going off on a little bit of line. I've always said, every show I've done, lineup construction far more important than actually understanding each and every individual player and the matchup and everything else. I know these shows, we want to talk about the matchup and try to find that the guy who's going to be 5% owned on a slate like this and is going to hit 3 home runs for us. But really, your lineup construction is going to make your money in the long run with this. So, so that was kind of a long-winded way to say I think Baltimore is going to be the 2nd choice in the as far as in stacks. So single entry, I would move on. I think building maybe 20 maxes, you're definitely going to want to have some pieces of Baltimore. Probably more. You're going to basically flip it. So San Diego's going to be highest on Baltimore, and then Texas. If you're playing like a 20 max, maybe you want a little bit more Texas, Baltimore in the middle, and San Diego up top. You got to mess around with it in that way. So now when we talk about the pitchers, Yeah, Burns in this Burns is 6.1 projected for the strikeouts. Like I said, C says 6.8. He's more expensive, right? Burns, I got to flip over to him. Yeah, Burns at 9,500. So he will be lower owned. So this is another situation where, because the price, I'm not so much worried about salary today. I think we could fit in just a lot of different things. I think Burns becomes lower owned because of salary compared to Cease, and I think maybe we could get a little bit of leverage by playing Burns. Still going to be high owned, but I think maybe we get a little bit of leverage playing Burns over Cease for that reason.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I like Burns though. I'm gonna go with him over Cease if I have to just pick one, and I think Cease just gets steamed higher. We'll have to see where the ownership kind of shakes out. Let's go to the next game. So it's Tigers and Guardians. You got they're starting out with Holton, and then they're going to have Maeda as the replacement, and then Gavin Williams will be on the mound, which I mean, Gavin Williams isn't the craziest play. The problem is 7,800, and you kind of talked about this earlier, and I think this is a really good point. And I notice this sometimes when building my lineups is like, I'll try to put the math together of like trying to figure out, well, why am I playing a Gavin Williams, right? Or like when I could easily just play one of these other pitchers, like, are there spend up options for me to go to? And like, I don't know how much we need to spend now just because it doesn't feel like there's a ton of spend up offenses. Like, yes, you can make it against Baltimore and the Dodgers are a little bit spend up, but I know the Padres are cheap. Nationals, not too worried about their prices. It just does seem kind of easy pricing wise today. So I don't know how much I need to go down to these cheap pitchers than other slates on like a 12 gamer. Yeah, it's something else I consider. So I'm definitely not considering these guys as much. I think, could Gavin Williams be on the winner? Sure. But I don't think you'd have a lot. Like in your 150, I don't think you're going to have that much of him. And then I know Kenta Maeda can blow up. I don't think the Guardians are a team that are going to get much ownership. Would they be a team that you're going to have, overweight on the field in your tournaments here?
Yeah. So let me just start with Williams. Projected for 6 strikeouts. And I mentioned before, Burns projected at 6.1. When we get to Bassett, he's at 6.1. So the price is cheap relative to all these other guys. And like you said, and I was talking about earlier, I don't know if it's important, which is really going to, I think, keep the Gavin Williams ownership level low. So if I'm single entry, I'd actually be looking to, because I think I could differentiate myself with a guy who potentially can score right up there with some of these other pitchers on the slate. And I'm getting him at a low ownership. The fact that he's got the 6K projection in the betting market to be able to maybe differentiate myself a bit, and then maybe go for maybe some bigger, some more expensive bats that aren't necessarily going to be high owned. I think that's a way to play single entries, 3 maxes, things like that, to get them in there. As far as on the 150, I play it a little bit differently, and I kind of touched on that, but I'm thinking I'll probably be somewhere in the 25% range on a Gavin Williams, maybe even go up to 30 for that reason, just because I think you want to be over on Williams on this slate. As far as the stacks go, I will have a bit of Cleveland, just seeing where I run it. And probably, I think Cleveland's probably going to be an under-owned stack as well. So I think that's a place where I'll have a bit over the market. I think if you get yourself to maybe 20 to 25% Cleveland stacks, I don't mind that at all. And I think you get yourself in a good situation where, again, we don't have, I've got them projected 4.6 runs, not a massive difference, especially on a small slate over the top teams, which are all at 5 runs. I think, as a matter of fact, they're the fourth choice at 4.6. So I think Cleveland winds up being a good team, both with the pitcher Williams and with the stacks, maybe to differentiate yourself a bit from the field on such a short slate.
Yeah, no, I agree. Cleveland's definitely a team that I am going to look at. Like when I kind of ran some stuff getting on the show, like they graded out similar to the Rockies like they did yesterday, where I'm getting a little, but not that much. And that's an offense that I want to kind of consider here. It's just about trying to figure out how to kind of stack them up. The good news is they moved, I think it was Martinez. They finally moved Martinez to outfield and not third base. So you can play Martinez and Jose Ramirez together, I'm seeing in that lineup. So that's at least encouraging for sure with the way that team is designed. And they got some expensive bats now. So I'm definitely considering them. I think they're a good play. I know the Tigers sometimes can pop off. I'm not playing Tigers today. I don't need to play Tigers. So I'll probably stay away from them against Gavin Williams. Let's go to the next game up. It's Chicago White Sox and the Texas Rangers. It's Max Scherzer and it's Mr. Cannon, and it's definitely a spot that we're gonna like the Texas Rangers. Yes, the ballpark is not great at this time of year. We typically we don't love to take bats in Texas. We typically like to take from these hot weather games, but White Sox are there. It's a rookie in Cannon. We've played Cannon at times, but we're not going to play him, I think, in this matchup. We played him in the matches against like Seattle, and he's done well and shown upside. But also that Rangers team total is where it's at because of the bullpen he's going against. I mean, this White Sox bullpen is very bad. And Texas is a team hitting the ball a lot better. They hit it well last night. Price tags are pretty good on a lot of these options. Like Adolis Garcia is cheaper than normal. Wyatt Langford, pretty solid. Josh Smith. Overall, it's definitely a lineup that I want to get exposure to. You even have Corey Seager. I know he's pricey, but I'm going to want to get him in there. And it's a slate, too, where you have Gunnar Henderson on the slate. You got CJ Abrams. You have a lot of shortstops where I think the ownership could get a little bit spread out. But overall, Texas is a really good play. Are they the top play for you on this slate stats? And do you want to take any bats against Max Scherzer?
So, yeah, I mean, we'll start with Scherzer. He's at 6.5 strikeouts in the betting market. So one of the better strikeout props that I'm seeing, heavily juiced the 5.5, 2-1 over the 5.5. So that translates to right around 6.5 strikeouts. So I do like Scherzer on the slate. And I think, again, Scherzer is probably going to be lesser owned than maybe Cease, Bassett, Burns. So I think you can potentially get yourself in, with a lesser owned pitcher on a slate like this, with a pitcher who is right there, just below Cease as far as projected for the most strikeouts on the slate against a team like the White Sox, where I think he can have a really, really good, strong outing. So I do like Scherzer quite a bit in the matchup. Now, the Sims, I ran the Sim. I always like to run the Sims. I'm really learning, especially in the high stakes, believe it or not, the Sim, like these teams that do well, that project well in the Sims, if you just kind of run a Sim, they will be, it'll translate more into the high stakes games and the higher ownership. And I'm seeing Texas really perform well on the Sims that is projected to score some of the most runs on the slate. I mentioned before, they've got five run projection. They're also potentially as far as ownership goes. So that is giving me a little bit of pause on Texas as far as using them in a single entry. But the stack builds, I will definitely have quite a bit of Texas in this matchup against Cannon. But I think I still like that Cleveland stack better as far as game theory goes. I would lean more towards the Cleveland stack, and I think the Texas stack here is probably the best of maybe the three. I think San Diego. I think I mentioned San Diego, Baltimore, and then Texas. Of those big three, I think Texas is probably, so if you want to go a step up from Cleveland, I think Texas will be the third owned of those, and I think they'll actually be higher owned in the high stakes games if anyone out there is playing the high stakes games.
Yeah, no, I think the two that we're definitely kind of looking at the most would be Padres and Texas. I think Baltimore is going to have ownership, but I do think it's kind of those two for sure, and for good reason. They're good stacks. You can find different ways to make them different. Maybe sometimes I talk about this, like maybe it's just fading Dylan Cease, right? If you faded Dylan Cease, you're already probably eliminating like half the field right away. And of course, Dylan Cease could have a big game, or he could have just a game where you don't need the pitcher, or maybe just pitching's not that big of a factor, where you're not gaining ground there, but there's a chance you do gain some ground if he gets like 5 DK points or something crazy like that. So,
a lot of when you're looking at the top pitcher, I do think the one that makes the most sense is Washington. Again, if you're looking for that leverage play against one of these top pitchers, of all the top pitchers, I do agree with you. I think the Washington one would be the best one.
Yeah, it's like if you have to pick, I'm not saying you have to, but if you had to pick, that would be the one for sure. But yeah, like Texas, they're definitely a good play. I agree with the Cleveland take. Cleveland does seem like that team that I'm just going to kind of gravitate towards as we get off the show and everything. But that's kind of the one that I'm looking at. Let's talk about the next game up. Blue Jays and Rays. Blue Jays and Rays, definitely a game to discuss. Chris Bassett going up against this Rays team. We do not have a lineup out. We don't have a lineup out for a lot of these teams. That could also affect some of the ownership for these future games. So, or for the slate. So keep that in mind as well, that people just might not play guys from that game because of it. And that's why the Padres might even get steamed up even more. But I mean, I think this game, from a pitching perspective, Bassett, he's in play, but I do not like a chalkier Chris Bassett, which I do think he is going to get ownership for his price at 7.6. And then Taj Bradley at 9K. I hate the price tag at 9K. I really do. I mean, I like Taj Bradley. I like him in certain matchups. The Blue Jays is not really an ideal matchup for him. I know he's talented. I know he can get strikeouts, but this Blue Jays team doesn't strike out a ton. I hate the run total being at 7.5, but I do not think that the Rays or Blue Jays are the craziest plays in tournaments. Like, we've seen the Rays hitting it a lot better, especially Randy Arozarena. You got Brandon Lowe and Palacios as those lefties up at the top that I like a lot. Then Vladimir Guerrero is one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now. We've seen George Springer breaking slates right now. Like, it's just, there's potential in this game with it having lower ownership. So I'd be curious your take on this, but for me, I don't know what to do because I think they're in play in tournaments and I think they're interesting plays, but I want to get your take on it, like what you're seeing in Vegas and everything like that, because it is only a 7.5 total.
It is, yeah, low total. Both of these pitchers are going to get some ownership. Bradley will not get as much ownership, which means, I know a lot of people here in the chat are liking Taj Bradley and how he's been performing as of late. Just talk about the betting markets, though. They've got him only at 5.2 strikeouts. They're projecting 17 outs. So what is that? Not even to get through the sixth inning. 2.4 earned runs, 5.1 hits. So that's kind of the line that we're looking at in Vegas on Bradley. And then you've got Bassett, who will be owned much more here than Bradley will be. He's projected out for 6.1 strikeouts. And at a cheap price, the 7,600. So I think Bassett, I think I would much rather have Bradley, I think, here than Bassett, again, kind of playing it a little bit differently than the market. On the offensive side, the Rays are popping as a pretty good play as far as the Sims. And again, that's because the Sims going to be looking at maybe a leverage play against Bassett. So the Sims think that since Bassett's going to be relatively owned, Tampa would be a strong play. So just know that what I've seen over the last few months, really studying the Sims in the higher stake games, these teams that are not necessarily projected for as high of an ownership will get higher ownership because a lot of the higher stakes players are using Sims now. So I think Tampa gets bumped up on the high stakes games because of that. So if you are playing a high stakes and you kind of want to maybe you were thinking maybe taking Tampa as a play, it's going to be lower owned. I think they'll be a little bit higher owned in the high stakes games than they will be necessarily in the big GPP, whatever it's called today, the one that I play. It's usually the relay or whatever it is today. They'll probably be lower owned there than they will be in the higher stakes games. So just keep that in mind. I think as far as the stacks on the Toronto side, I think they're going to get a bump up as well. I think this is the game I think that a lot of people are going to be looking at to maybe be contrarian. I do like Toronto more than I like the Tampa side as far as stacks go. I just think there's some better options here, but I do think maybe getting under on Bassett and then bumping Taj Bradley up a little bit if you're playing any significant amount of lineups, I think is the way to go with this game.
All right. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think you can make arguments on both sides. And I just don't want to play the Bradley price tag. I'd rather play Corbin Burns and some other options, but I get it for sure. And I know Jake said only 5 earned runs over the last 50 innings. I think that is pretty good for Taj for sure. He's definitely been impressive, no doubt, this season. Let's go to the last game of the slate. San Francisco Giants, Los Angeles Dodgers. We got Logan Webb versus Clayton Kershaw. And listen, Kershaw's on the mound, and people see the name Kershaw. And I mean, I think overall people understand Kershaw's not who he used to be. He also struggled in his rehab starts a little bit. So I'm curious what happens, especially, I mean, this is like a rivalry game, right? You see the Yankees and Mets, the past couple of days. The Mets have absolutely just beaten the crap out of the Yankees. And, people would have said a month ago that would be absolutely crazy. Giants put up I think 8 runs last night on them. And I just wouldn't be surprised if the Giants kept the success going against Kershaw here, especially with a lot of these righties they have. They got Soler, Matos, Ramos, Chapman. I mean, it's a strong lineup with these power righties. I don't think the Giants are super crazy to consider. I'm not considering Kershaw at all. And honestly, the Dodgers bats haven't been that good. I think they're going to get ownership where I don't know if I really want to play the Dodgers that much. I'm curious your take on this game, because for me, it sounds crazy, but I think I have more interest in the Giants than the Dodgers.
Yeah, I tend to lean that way as well. I think the Giants are a decent stack here. Who knows how long we're going to get with Kershaw in the game. He is projected for 5 strikeouts, but a lot of the sharp books are not even putting any other line. They just have a strikeout number on them and nothing else. So they're not 100. Well, actually, they've got all the other market. They don't have the outs market on Kershaw. But when you look at where he's projected as far as earned runs and hits, they're not really projecting him to go very deep in this game, even though with the 5 strikeouts. So my guess is he gets 4, maybe 5 innings, and I would tend to lean fading Kershaw in this game. And because of that, I think I think you make a good point. I think you can take San Francisco as a fairly low-owned stack, and I prefer them over the Dodgers as well. I think it's just going to depend on how you're going to play. If you're going to try to take a shot here, maybe with some of the cheaper pitchers, you're going to take a Williams and a Bassett, maybe go cheap on the pitchers, then maybe you could throw in a Dodger stack, which will be a little bit more expensive. So it's going to really depend on how you're going to play it. But I don't think either one of these teams are going to be relatively. And I could get behind either one, but I do like your logic there on the San Francisco side. I almost like them a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to be loading up. I just think if I have to pick one, and of course, I'm not going to argue with an Ohtani one-off or anything like that. And honestly, I do really think a lot of these later games are just going to be more under-owned. If you want a good example of that, go to yesterday's slate. Go back and look at the ownership on the early games versus the late games if you really want to kind of figure that out. I'm looking at it now just to see the gap in games. It's 12 o'clock is when they start Eastern, and then Blue Jays Rays is at 3, Giants Dodgers is at 4. Yeah. And then the other game is the White Sox and Rangers are at 2:30. So once that game's kicking off, some of these other games, they might be just not saying they'll be done, but they'll be at the tail end for sure.
Well, you make a good point, because the Colorado lineup didn't come out till late yesterday after the lock. And yeah, a lot of people just don't want to play, they don't want to put a stack in there that they're going to have to necessarily run back. Not everyone sits in front of the computer all day like we do, and they are able to make the changes. So a lot of people are going to put their lineup in. They're going to see there's no way that lineup's going to post in the next 30 minutes, and they'll leave that one out. So I agree with you. You're going to see probably much lower ownership than you should, because I think that's a good point.
Yeah, and also here's a great example yesterday. I know FanDuel, this player probably wouldn't have been super high owned, but I got a player on FanDuel playing in Coors Field at 0.6% owned, which is crazy to think, but I swapped out Elias Diaz and I went Jacob Stallings, and he had a home run. And I know Jacob Stallings isn't just this amazing baseball player, but he's just a punt option that is playing in Coors and has some power. And I think 0.6% owned on someone like that is pretty crazy. So he wasn't projected in the lineup, and it was Diaz projected, and things can just change. So there's obviously that advantage. I know Bryce talked about it a little bit on the show yesterday that we did on the premium side. He said you could play this like an NFL slate, right? If you play some early chalk that doesn't work out, maybe make some pivots, or let's say you have the chalk offense, like a chalk offense later, like Texas, and you feel like you're pretty behind. I don't know, make an adjustment. There's ways you can play the slate for sure. Make sure to do that. But let's dive into what DC always likes to do at the end of the show. So give me your most important pitcher on the slate here, stats.
Yeah, I think Gavin Williams for me is going to be the most important pitcher. So I think I'll probably wind up a decent amount over the market. I think if he does well, I'll do well.
All right, mine's Corbin Burns. He'll be my most important pitcher for sure. Definitely going him over Cease, so that'll be a big stand for me. let's go to we didn't even do this yesterday, but we were pretty clear about the Rockies. But top stacks. Who are your who's your favorite stack overall, and then the favorite contrarian?
So I think, yeah, I mean, I like overall. I think the stack that probably scores the most runs here is going to be Baltimore. And I think we're not going too deep into the contrarian, but I do like Cleveland maybe as the fourth best stack, or the fourth or fifth most owned stack. So I'll go with Cleveland there.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think number one stack is the Padres. I do agree on Cleveland, but I want to give something else different for the people. And we'll go with the one I just talked about, the Giants. And Lycan says it's super hot in LA. And that is a fair point. This is an LA day game. And that park plays smaller when it's really hot there. So I'll go with the Giants. That'll be one that I'm definitely considering here on this slate. Let's go to favorite overall batter on the entire slate. Who is it?
Oh God, let's see. Give me one sec. We got to do the home runs too. So
yeah, we got to do it. Would you want to do a home run first? You can do that.
Yeah, let's see. Well, I'm going to go with Gunnar Henderson as the favorite option. I mean, it's costs you a ton of money, but again, I think you'll be able to fit him in quite a few lineups. And I'm going to go with as far as a home run, I'm going to say Matt Chapman.
I like the Chapman call. That's a good one. Let's see. So favorite overall play for me. Let's see. He's kind of he's a really good value today. It'll be Xander Bogaerts. Xander Bogaerts seems like a very strong play to me. Just point per dollar wise, really good one. Hitting the 3-hole. Patrick Corbin, 4K, feels too cheap for him, so we'll go with that. And then my home run call. Let's see. I don't want to give him because there is a chance he doesn't play because the Giants do stupid stuff with their lineup. Let's go with who do we want to make it? Let's go with Josh Naylor. Josh Naylor hits one out. Big power back, gets the job done. So that'll be my home run call, my favorite overall play, and that'll wrap up the show. Thanks a lot for joining us. I believe tomorrow will be, I think it's a premium show on Friday. DC will not be here. DC is he's on some trip, so he's probably having a good time doing something with probably the lady or family. I have no idea. I'm sure you'll be back tomorrow, right, Stats?
I will. Yeah, I was out last week in Scotland. I will be back tomorrow.
Yep. So Stats will be back. I don't know who he's back with. I'm sure there'll be one or two people. I'm not sure, but it'll be a good show. So sign up. Use that code RPS15, get you 15% off. And that way you can check out the premium show and hang out with us and get the winners. But for me, Mangone and Stats, we'll see you guys later.